everybody, Raul here for Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the extraordinary honor and pleasure of catching up with somebody who we haven't talked to for a very long time, Derek Frank. Yay!
Hey, good to see you.
So Derek, the last time we chatted, as we were thinking about it, all the way back to 2017, and as I recall, you were one of the busiest people I think I've ever talked to because you never say no to anything almost. And so we were hearing about all of those details. Fill us in. What have you been up to over this last 7 years now?
Wow, 7 years. So I think at that time I was going back and forth between, I was playing in the band Air Supply, but also still playing with Shania Twain. So I think I had, and Mindy Abair. So I had those three things going. So yeah, I was crazy busy during that time. I eventually left Air Supply, joined Gwen Stefani, then juggled Gwen Stefani and Shania Twain for a while. And then I did just last year, I did a big Shania Twain tour. We were out all year. That ended in November. Now I'm all done working with her. And now I'm just focusing on my own stuff. And I just released a new album and focusing on the artist side of my career now.
Very nice. Very nice. And your new album titled Origin Story gives us a little information about you. And so tell us more details about this, because I think you're kind of super duper in this album.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's just the stuff that I write. It's on my albums. Like, this is my third solo album, and it's all instrumental, kind of in the jazz funk vein. And being a child of the '70s, I tend to be influenced by a lot of stuff that came out of the '70s, and especially a lot of like '70s TV and movie soundtrack stuff. So that's definitely a big influence on this. And just as the song started to develop and I had to come up with titles for them, I just kind of came up with this concept of it being kind of reflecting on my past and my childhood and where I lived and where I grew up and my love of cartoons and comic books and superheroes and all that kind of stuff. And that just sort of became the theme for this record.
Very nice. And the kind of one of the general veins that I think kind of the key thing is there's a lot of funk in there. So talk to us about how that kind of has tied in.
Yeah, I mean, that's, as a bass player, I just I love playing funk music. It's, some of my biggest influences are in the funk vein, and I love playing that kind of stuff. And, I make a living playing pop mainly. I play with pop singers, and that's mainly how I make a living. So I feel like the funk and the instrumental and the jazz side of my playing, that's something that kind of gets pushed to the back burner when I'm doing my pop gigs. And so in doing my solo stuff, it kind of allows me to show that side of my playing and those influences like, bass players like Rocco Prestia and James Jamerson and Larry Graham and Louis Johnson and, people like that.
Gotcha. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Rocco because I believe just got paid. It kind of has a driving Rocco feel to it.
Yeah. Oh, on that the video that's on YouTube. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a cover that we started putting in our live shows. And yeah, I mean, I'm riding that E string, 16ths on the E string on that.
Absolutely.
I think ZZ Top's version, I think Dusty Hill is playing quarter notes, but for me it kind of lent itself to a more like what is hip kind of vibe, just open E, 16ths, which I love doing. And a lot of my original music has that sort of 16th note groove. Like Rocco is definitely like one of my biggest influences for my music.
Nice. Now, in some of the videos, again, I see the collection of instruments, including B3 Hammond, which is always a tasty choice. Were these the same fellows that recorded in studio with you, or how did that process go about?
Yes, I'm a big fan of like having my live band play on the records, where like in the pop world that doesn't really happen that much. It's with the artists that I've worked with, they get a producer who brings in his own team to do the recording. So in the pop world, it's interesting how artists won't use their live bands in the studio. But yeah, I just believe that when you're playing live with people, you're building a chemistry and a vibe together, and that you want to capture that in the studio. So yeah, these are the guys that I play with live: Randy Cook on drums, Kerry Frank on keys, sometimes Matt Rohde on keys, Joshua Ray Gooch on guitar, sometimes Anthony King on guitar, Demian Arriaga on percussion. So yeah, this is my live band, and every now and then we have to get subs and things like that. But,
sure.
But yeah, these guys are creating all this music with me.
Gotcha. And because these are your compositions, And were they involved with any of the songwriting process, or did you bring it to them and said, okay, this is what I want?
What I generally do is I'll come up with demos on my own, and they're just kind of rough demos. I'll, find some loop in Logic, some drum loop, and use that as the basis. I don't do any real serious drum programming because I know I'm going to throw it away afterwards anyway. It's just a placeholder, and then I leave it up to Randy to come up with the best, drum part. And the same with everybody else. Like I say, these demos, like the form and the melody is there, but then, I want them to put their stamp on it. So we rehearse before we go into the studio, and we did it that way for the last 2 records, where we do a few rehearsals. And even with this record, there were a couple songs that we were playing live for a bit before we recorded them. So we kind of already had them arranged when we got in the studio. So that's usually the way it works. And then there's one song on there that Josh, the guitarist, and I wrote together. He came over one day, and his ideas were just flowing, and it ended up being a keeper.
Nice. So in addition to that, getting your sound, as we'd like to talk a little bit about what you're playing on. I know we had talked about it before. In the videos, I'm seeing different basses. How are you getting your sound nowadays?
Yeah, I kind of go through phases and I experiment with different instruments. And, I was a big P-bass fan for a long time. The record I did in 2020, 11 years later, that's mostly a P-bass, a 63 P-bass with flat wounds. Mm-hmm. But now I've discovered the short scale Music Man Stingray basses, and those have become my go-to basses for my project. So I use 2 of them live. I use one tuned to step down and one tuned in standard. They both have labella, low tension flat wound strings on them, and they're just so fun to play. They're passive, which is kind of unique to Music Man, and so putting a passive electronic setup and flat wound strings, a short scale Stingray just gives it the Stingray vibe, but something a little different. Like it inserts a little bit of an old school flavor to it, and those have become my go-tos for my music, and they're so fun to play. So those are on the new record. It's mostly Music Man Stingray. I did use a 66 Harmony H22 on one song, a song called Cul-de-sac, because I love the hollow body sound as well. Mm-hmm. And then I have a great Labella Olinto short scale bass. It's like a Mustang.
Yes.
I've got flats on it as well, and I used that on one song, but the rest are Music Man.
Nice. And amplification wise, what are you playing on?
Live, I use Aguilar rigs. My go-to is a DB 750 or 751 with DB 810 or 2410 cabs. That's like my go-to, my backline rig. In town for kind of smaller gigs, I have 2 of the SL 112 cabs and an AG 700 head. But for this record, we recorded through a vintage Ampeg B15. The bass sound is kind of a 50-50 split between a Noble Tube DI preamp and an old Ampeg B15 that the producer Jim Scott has in his studio.
Very nice. And did you use much in the way of pedals? Because again, it sounds like a lot of it would be kind of the clean sound we're looking for.
I like to step on stuff and make weird noises for sure. I've got a Origin Effects Cali 76 compressor pedal that's like that. That's kind of an always on pedal. So that compressor is always on. It's on for the whole record. What else am I using? MXR envelope filter, the M82. Mm-hmm. Got that. I think I used my Dark Glass Vintage microtubes on a couple things. What else is on this record? There's a cover I did of the Bee Gees' Jive Talking. That's got a bunch of stuff on it. I used a Source Audio Spectrum intelligent filter pedal. That's really cool. It's got a lot of different sounds on it. So there's like an octave and filter sound that I used on that track. And I'm wondering if I have an MXR vintage bass octave, the little skinny blue one that I use on a lot of stuff. And I'm trying to think if I used that on the record. I used it on the last record, but I'm not sure if this one. This one I'm feeling like I mainly did envelope filter. Was kind of the main effect on this one.
And with this album having dropped, it just dropped March 25th. What are the plans for the future? Are you guys planning on touring this, or what's in the works?
I'm booking shows. I'm booking a lot of just kind of regional shows around LA right now, and I'm trying to book other things. I'm finding it's difficult being an independent artist, even though I've been on the scene for a while and I've worked with, a lot of, whatever high profile people. I'm finding that doesn't really translate into being an artist. So right now I'm kind of searching for management and an agent. I think that's kind of what I need to do. I need to kind of build that business team to get me booked, because I do want to tour. I want to tour around the States. I want to tour elsewhere, Europe.
Yeah.
I think this music would fit into a lot of scenes in the jam band world and the jazz and funk world. I feel like instrumental music is kind of having a moment right now. There's a lot of great people doing great instrumental music, and audiences are digging it. So I feel like it's a good time for this kind of thing. So I'm just working on that. I'm trying to get this band out there a little bit.
And because in the past you've been so multitasking, if you will, are you working on any other projects, or is this the main focus right now?
This is the main focus right now. And I mean, I'm still making myself available for session work. Like I still, I do some sessions. I do some kind of local gigs in LA. I'm just a lot more selective these days about what I do. I don't need to do everything anymore. I've been doing everything for a long time, and it's been great, but I feel like I've done that to get to where I am now, where I can be a little bit more selective. So yeah, I've been doing some really great recording sessions with some great people doing that. And I'm sure, I'll probably tour with somebody when the right call comes in. I'm not against that.
Gotcha.
But I think, I'm done with Gwen. I'm done with Shania. I feel like at this point, there's maybe a shift. There's maybe a shift genre-wise. Like, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep working in the kind of mainstream pop world as much anymore. But I don't know. The universe always has plans for us. So I can't really plan what my next call is going to be, what my next gig is going to be. I couldn't plan it when I got called for Shania or Gwen. Those calls just came out of nowhere. And that's just kind of the way things are. So I'm just going to keep working on my own thing. And, if another call comes up that sounds interesting, I'm open to it.
Nice. Well, and it sounds like there's a lot of possibility in the future. So if people want to know what you're up to, where's the best place for them to look?
Instagram. I try to be active on Instagram. Then my website, derekfrank.com. Try to keep things updated there. I keep my tour schedule up there. So I've got some local California shows coming up in May and June. And then we'll see what happens beyond that, really hoping to get out there.
Nice. Well, Derek, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. Very excited about Origin Story.
Thank
People, you want to get your funk on. This is the album to do it. You've seen him here on Bass Musician Magazine, Derek Frank.
Thanks, Raul. Appreciate it.